And that's why we're talking about.
And they're going to be replacing them with chocolate chips.
We're
But you did hear about what Elon Musk is doing, right?
Chipless.
He's doing he's making his own chips.
Really?
For Tesla, yeah. And I understand that it's going to be a little rocket ship that they're going to be making.
Okay with that too. I'm okay with that.
Did you say a rocket chip?
Chip.
Yeah.
I'm okay with not driving anymore. I really am. Give me a Segway or just, I'll get on a bus. I don't care.
That's the problem. That's the only thing that's
I
going to
can
help.
take you in my gypsy moth, but not very far.
I'd get in the gypsy. Well, I shouldn't say that. I don't want to get it. I don't want to get it. I told you before, Rosemary.
Right,
They're beautiful
Right.
antiques, beautiful things to see. But I'd much prefer to sit in an antique chair than.
It is an antique chair, just has wings on it.
Oh my gosh. Well, listen, they're beautiful, beautiful planes. So, but are we allowed to call them gypsy moths? That's the question.
Yes, you could refer to it by its, you can call it a DH60 moth if you prefer.
Okay, no, I'm okay with that. I just didn't know I know there was a.
I looked it up, and actually in England, first of all, it's not spelled with a Y, so it's actually it's the English spelling, and in England, it's a more nuanced question because there is an official government office with the gypsy name, so the English Roma aren't as upset.
But I thought the issue is in England, the people that they call gypsies are oftentimes not Roma at all. The
That's true.
Gypsy travelers are actually Irish
Mhm.
guys, and they're not gypsy at all. So I think they use the term, in different ways. Yeah.
In any case, it's named after an insect, not a person. So,
which is
Oh,
named
but
after.
isn't the moth named
The moth
after?
is
the
named
moth
after.
was named after, yes, because I looked it up and I forget the reason now, but yes, it was named after the people.
So yeah, the gypsies or the travelers, as they call it, I guess that's what they're called now. Anyways, so there's your.
I'm afraid if you refer to the traveler moth, nobody's going to know what you're talking about.
So we got onto the subject of gypsies, or gypsy planes.
DH60 is a nice.
So they're beautiful.
D is in dog or G is in gypsy?
D is in Delta.
They are beautiful. Anyways, so we're about to head into to Thanksgiving, and I hope everybody has a good holiday, has a chance to be thankful this week for again, I was looking at stories this morning about whether we should have a Thanksgiving, if it's politically correct to have a holiday that's connected to a myth of Native Americans and pilgrims getting along together. The fact that their kids make up, Native American costumes or headdresses that have nothing like the Wampanoag Indians and Native Americans tribes did in Boston area, in that Plymouth area. I don't know. To me, there's something nice, at least about the myth of cooperation between Native Americans. And I mean, the Mutual Defense Pact that they signed was actually maybe not enforced or done probably, but at least there was an effort to try to do something like that. And I don't know. I think just the idea of being thankful, which is what it was the original intent of the idea to have a National Day of Thanks. Some people say we should have a National Day of Atonement. Well, maybe that's not a bad idea either. But a National Day of Thanks, to do away with a National Day of Thanks in order to get a National Day of Atonement, I think misses the point. You need to have
Columbus Day, the National Day of Atonement.
Yeah, exactly. You need to have both. I mean, both of those ideas, atonement, and which brings us a sense of humility, a sense of, understanding the consequences of our actions. Those are important. But how can you say that you do that at the expense a national day of thanks. And it was really Lincoln who eventually made it a national holiday. It was George Washington who first proposed it, almost immediately in the 1790s. That was the goal, was to have a national day of thanks. And I think it's impressive that the two presidents that we kind of look at as our great examples of ideals and kind of way human behavior. And I know it's somewhat mythic and everything, but they really were special in that way of recognizing the need to have these values of being grateful and counting our blessings, which is really obviously something that's very important. Interestingly, Jefferson did not like the idea of a Thanksgiving because it reeked of religion. It was way too religious for him. He didn't like that.
Our Christian forefathers didn't really like religion.
Yeah, but that guy in particular really didn't like that kind of stuff. So he did
not Christian theists.
Yes.
Oh, you're right. Correct. Theists.
He was not. Jefferson thought it was way too religious to start talking about national days of being thankful to anyone, to Providence, to the Creator. Any of that stuff was even too much for Jefferson. So, but again, it is important to have the value of appreciation and thanks, not again at the expense of recognizing things that we've done wrong, but again, I think it creates a sense of ability, a sense of appreciation, and definitely gives us a sense that not everything was done with our own hands. That the people who came before us also helped give us things that we oftentimes don't give them credit for. So
I always felt that between begging for candy and begging for presents, we should have 24 hours of, I really appreciate what I have.
I agree with you.
That was always when I taught school, that's what I always said.
That's a great lesson too, Judith. I don't like it was not until literally our last child, Shira, that we let our kids do the Halloween stuff, because I celebrated Halloween as a kid, but I really thought about what are the values that you're going around asking people for candy, asking strangers for candy. What kind of weird value is that? And so my kids eventually wore me down and said, it's not, not everything has to have meaning to it. So, we can go out and have fun, but I really did feel like this was not something that we needed to celebrate, that we need, there was no need for us to have this in our homes. Anyways, that was their dad being maybe overly difficult, but anyways, they seem to overall turn out okay. So I will stand by my not having to do it, but I like Judith's teaching that Thanksgiving comes between begging for candy and begging for presents. And now the weird thing is that kids, at least out here, were out all week this week. So I assume that they did Thanksgiving stuff last week. I'm not even sure. I'll ask Dina what she did with her school kids down in San Diego for Thanksgiving before they went out. But we used to, Thanksgiving was like that foretaste of winter break, and you were like, oh my gosh, it's coming, the winter break is coming. But nowadays they get a whole week off, and
leave it.
That's that. Anyways, so last week we were reading about this interesting hero of Israel, Gideon, who is kind of noteworthy for his battles that he wins. And we read about Deborah and Barak before that. This gave us a little bit more like battle info, and for people who like to move soldiers around a board, risk type stuff, and a little bit more details of it. But Gideon also seems to understand the political nature of this, which is that the other tribes, that because they're in a tribal confederation, which tribes participate in these battles actually kind of dictates who's going to have power. And as we saw, the tribe of Ephraim gets mad at him because he's not they're not included in the battle initially. And so they don't like that. And that creates tension amongst the tribes. Which tribes get to participate in this? But Gideon is successful at defeating this Midianite Amalekite confederation. Again, these are people that live on the other side of the Jordan River in modern day Jordan. He drives them back. He goes into Jordan and drives them back and wipes them out. And again, the thing that's interesting about Gideon is he has another name. He has a non-Hebrew name. He has a Canaanite name, Yerubal, which means to strive for or to magnify Baal. The Hebrew kind of plays on it and says that he strove against Baal, that he destroyed. One of the first things he did is destroy the Baal shrine in his own village, not the Canaanite city, but in his own village, his own Hebrew Israelite village, he destroyed the Baals. But we can see that the Israelites, the tribes are worshiping Baal. And this is what we're going to pick up with this week, because what we read last week was, it came to pass as soon as Gideon died that the children of Israel turned again. They went astray after the Baalim and made Baal Berit their god, which Baal Berit literally means the Baal of the covenant, which shows you that, again, that in Canaanite language, the word Brit, the Hebrew Canaanite word, is the same. Baal Berit means the covenant, the Baal covenant, the covenant of Baal, the covenanted Baal, if you will. Same word like we use for covenant, Berit. And the children of Israel did not remember the Lord their God. They did not remember the God Yud-He-Vav-He, their God, who delivered them out of the hands of their enemies on every side. Neither did they show kindness to the house of Yerubal, namely Gideon, according to all the goodness that he had shown Israel. So they didn't respect him either. They didn't respect Yerubal / Gideon. The guy is known by both names. So this week, we're going to pick up with his family, Gideon's children. And what we did read about Gideon, I should go back a little bit more. He came back with a lot of money, 1,700 shekels of gold as he took back in battles, besides the crescents and the eardrops and the purple garments that were on the kings of the Midian and the chains that were around the camels' necks. And it says he made an ephod, which became an idol in itself, which wasn't a good thing. I mean, it wasn't his intention, but it did. But it says also in verse 30 that he had 70 sons begotten of his body, for he had many wives. And again, you'd say, well, that's kind of a strange phrase, begotten of his body. But the reality is he has 70 children, 70 sons, I shouldn't say children, 70 sons, because he was married to many women. That's what it says. Assumedly, he was married to many women because he had so much money. And so he could afford to do this. What was interesting is that these were his wives. I mean, that's the normal word for women or for wives. But the word that's used for this special woman is a pilgashu, is a pilegesh, or pilgashu means his concubine. But this is a concubine. This is a woman who's not regarded as a wife. Okay, so she has a secondary status. And she's not his wife. She's his concubine. And she also lives in Shechem, which is modern day Nablus. It's in Israel. It's in the Palestinian territories, actually, Nablus today. But this was an area which goes back, as we know, to the story of Abraham, to the story of Jacob. This is the place where his daughter Dinah, Jacob's daughter Dinah, is raped or taken by a guy named Shechem. So this is a major city in the ancient land of Israel. And it's a city. And Gideon's son, Abimelech, lives there with his mother, who's not a wife of Gideon, but a concubine. This will be a theme that we'll see later on in the book of Judges as well, in the story of Jephthah. We'll see this story motif play out again. Look, the reason the story is there is because it's not the typical kinds of things that would happen, in the sense that, yeah, it might have been typical for a wealthy prince / king of Israel, as we read later on with David, to have many wives, Solomon, and concubines. But the fact that one of those kids of the concubines winds up being the most important, that's not normal. And that's why this story, again, is being told in such a way that our attention is being directed to this. So this is where we're starting. Chapter 9 in the story of Abimelech, which literally means my father, the king. Abimelech means my father, the king. We've already seen Canaanite kings named Abimelech, which again shows you that Canaanite and Hebrew were pretty close. And Abimelech means my father, the king, which usually is, again, an indicator that you're a prince / a king, because if your father's a king, you're probably in line to be a king. So it's number one, saying that Shechem was kind of like a king. And number two, kind of saying that Abimelech thinks that maybe he should be king too. Let's take a look at what happens. Here's what happens. Rosemary, if you want to continue.
And Abimelech, the son of Jerubbaal, went to Shechem, to his mother's brethren, and spoke to them and to all the family of the house of his mother's father, saying, speak, I pray you, in the ears of all the men of Shechem, which is better for you, that all the sons of Jerubbaal, who are 70 persons, reign over you, or that one should reign over you. Remember also that I am your bone and your flesh.
You can kind of see what's happening, what Abimelech decides to do here, right? He is going to his mother's people, the people of Shechem, and he basically says, my father, by the way, who he calls Jerubbaal, he doesn't call him Gideon. Doesn't call him Gideon. He calls him Jerubbaal. He uses the Canaanite name for his dad. So he says to them, and by the way, we don't know at this point whether his mother is even a Hebrew, whether the people that he's talking to, his mother's household, is even not Canaanite, right? So he's going to his uncles, his cousins, the Shechemites, and he says to them, look, who'd you rather be your king? Me, who's one of your people, who's related to you, or these 70 guys? 70, there's 70 of them. It's going to be a disaster. 70 guys are never going to agree on anything. You can't be ruled by 70 people. And they're not your people. I'm your people. So you can see what Abimelech is doing.
And his mother's brethren spoke of him in the ears of all the men of Shechem all these words, and their hearts inclined to follow Abimelech, for they said, he is our brother. And they gave him 70 pieces of silver out of the house of Baal-Berid, which Abimelech hired vain and reckless persons who followed him.
Yeah. And again, the translation you'll see in different, slightly different versions and different translations, but the word rekim and pahazim, the funny thing about the word rake or reik, it means like baseless. It means empty. And we use the word rake in English, which is just coincidental. It's not like it's from the Hebrew word, a rake. But in Hebrew, it really means someone who has no values, no morals. There are some people who are pretty much mercenaries, ready to do anything, hire themselves out to anybody. 70 pieces of silver is not a huge amount of money. It's not like if you're spreading it around a bunch of people, it's not a lot of money. And it says right here that the money came right out of the treasury. It came out of the money that was in the treasury dedicated to this god Baal-Berid, which tells us so much, which is that the city of Shechem has a treasury to their God. That's not our God, it's Baal Brit. That's strike one. Strike two is that they are, Abimelech is taking it to hire not good people to fight with him. And the fact that, again, Abimelech, what's the purpose of this? It's to take power. And he does it in a way that, again, is connected to idolatry and connected to mercenaries, hiring out mercenaries. So they don't even fight. They're hiring people. They're hiring people to go out and fight. And here's what happens.
But aren't the 70, or isn't the 70 symbolic because of the 70?
Oh yeah, I mean it's definitely symbolic numbers. The 7 times 10 is the 70 nations. It's the 70 language. Comes out in 70 languages. You have the 70 that are part of the Septuagint. You have basically like 6 times 12 tribes, which is 72, but it's roughly 70. All of these numbers are indicative of these huge groups of people, whether it's it's kind of a Sanhedrin would have 70 plus people. All of these.
But doesn't it match the 70 persons in the previous sentence?
Oh yeah, no,
sentences?
These people that he goes out to kill are the 70 brothers. So he didn't hire, he hired 70 pieces of silver to go out and kill I jumped the gun, but yes, we don't know how many people he hired with the 70 pieces of silver. Did he hire 70 people? Did he hire 15 people? It doesn't say how many people he went out to kill, but yes, the 70 pieces of silver correspond to the 70 people that are about to get it right now. As I said before, I think last week or maybe at Friday Night Services, I mean, this is a Game of Thrones story, because this is a story of a mass murder for the sake of power, for the sake of taking over. Well, let's read this. Let's read what happens.
Can I ask, when they say, well, do you want to be ruled by 70 people? Would the Sanhedrin have been in existence when that was written or canonized?
No. And whether the rabbis interpret it to mean, but we know what this means. I mean, let me just see if there's any commentary. Rashi doesn't have anything here. Let's see if they said now. That doesn't help. Let's just see if there's any. Nope, it's nothing on that one either. No, I mean, it doesn't say anything about it here. The fact is that nope. The fact is that 70 people here. The part of the intention here is just basically saying you can't be ruled by 70 people, right? That's not rule. And so there's also this kind of intention here, which is that don't you want to consolidate power, which is the background of what essentially is going on in the story of the book of Judges, where these people come and they reign for a certain period of time, and then there's no continuity. And so the question of whether people are willing to, and this is the kind of the subtext, the unspoken message of this, is whether people have faith in God, that God is their ruler and that God will pick and choose people to rule them when they need it, if they need it, and otherwise they don't need it. That's the question, is whether people will have that kind of faith in God. And again, if they do the right thing, then these other countries wouldn't have attacked them anyways. So, this is what's weird about this story so far in the book of Judges, is that when Abimelech is doing what he's doing right now, he's not doing it in relation to an outside force. He's not saying you need me because we need to go out and fight the Midianites, or we need to fight the Canaanites, or he's doing this simply to say, I want to have power. And, do you want to have this weird kind of, power amongst 70 people who we really don't know who's in power, or are we going to, like people don't realize this story is even in the book of Judges. They don't even know the stories in the Bible. What's weird about it is that it's actually maybe one of the crucial stories in the whole book of Judges, and maybe one of the most important stories of the period between Joshua and King David, because what it really does is shows why the people, like you and I know why they wanted to have a king. They wanted to, it says they wanted to be like everyone else. They wanted to have power, centralized in one family, and, at least there'd be continuity, all those. We know that. This story actually isolates the problem. It actually gives us the focus of what really is going on when we talk about in this period. Why did you want to have a king? So the story of Jerubbaal and Abimelech is really like the proof text for what needs to happen. And again, people don't even read this story. They don't even know, like, even if they've heard of Gideon, they know about the battle. Battle is interesting and, kind of, well, he's a hero, whatever. But it's the aftermath of this, which is actually to me, was really the important part. The only story I would say that most people really know from Judges is the story of Samson. I would say that's the only walk away when people go, first of all, people might not know it's in Judges, but if they walk away and they go, hey, look, these are the people that are in the book of Judges. Who have you heard of? And you put Gideon, maybe a lot of people would maybe know Deborah, but I don't even know if they know that that's in Judges. If you put Deborah, Gideon, and Samson, they would put Samson 9 times out of 10, I think, that of people that they know about. And if they asked you anything else, like, okay, so what do you know about any of these characters? These are all people in Judges. That's the way I would do it. Gideon, Deborah, or Samson. What do you know about any of them? And people would say Samson had long hair and he was very strong. They would know that. So people would never know Abimelech. They would never know the story. And also the Jephthah story. They don't know the story. Jews didn't read this story. Jews didn't talk about this story. Other people's, I don't know. I don't know if Abimelech is talked about a lot in Christian settings. My guess is probably not, because it's actually a perfect example of why monarchs are horrible people. And so my guess is that most clerical powers that had a shared kind of, they had a shared, I would say, connection to the monarchy and into the stability of a monarchy, probably didn't encourage people to talk about these stories and to focus on the despotism and the bloodthirstiness of their kings. I mean, I don't think people studied this story, and Jews didn't talk about it because it's just a horrible story. So yeah, this is, let's read it. Let's read about this. So,
And he went to his father's house at Ophrah and slew his brothers, the sons of Jerubbaal, 70 persons upon one stone. Yet Jotam, the youngest son of Jerubbaal, was left, where he hid himself.
okay, before we go on, that line right there is up there as one of the most disturbing lines in the Bible. I mean, just horrible. This is a horrible, horrible story. It's a horrible story. He killed they're his half brothers. They're not his brothers. I know they have different moms. I can talk about what psychological effect it is being the son of a concubine versus the son of, wives. I get all that. You can do that too. What happened here, according to this story, is that he took his brothers, assumedly again, they were at a party, they were at a place where they were all there. The story here that's not here is that these guys that are fighting with him, his mercenaries, get the family, put him in a room together, and one by one he takes them out, and they get killed, and assumedly by him. He takes them out and essentially cuts off their heads or stabs them on one stone, it says. Okay, that means that he literally murdered them, execution style, 70 of his brothers, I mean, that's I mean, that's ridiculously gruesome. I mean, like the excess of Cain and Abel, this guy goes out and kills 70 people of his own flesh and blood. Now, one of them gets away. Now, by the way, that story, you know where that story's going, right? The one that gets away, one got away. The youngest. You know where the story's going. You don't even need to know anything. You could already write the end of the story just by that one line. So that one line, one verse, 70 people get murdered by their half brother, 70 guys, 70 other princes get murdered. And one of them, the youngest, runs away. There's like 71. There's not exactly 70, there's 71. And Yotam runs away. The youngest. All right. What's the aftermath of this?
And all the men of Shechem gathered together, and all the house of Milo, and went and made Abimelech king by the oak of the pillar that was in Shechem.
Okay, wait. Before we move on, let's just consider this for a second. It says he's king. Now, what's he king over? What is he king over? First of all, they have a coronation ceremony by an oak. This is the oak of the pillar, it's called the Motzav. So it's a pillar, probably again an Ashtaroth, Baal pillar. Maybe, again, ironically, their father, Gideon, tore down the pillar. Now they're dedicating a pillar. They're dedicating their king at a pillar at Baal Berit, or the Baal there, assuming it's Baal, same Baal Berit that we heard before. They gather together. It seems though, again, this is Shechem. This is not all of Israel. These are the people of Shechem, his family. So he killed them at Ophrah, which is further north, in kind of north central Galilee, north central Israel, but southern Galilee. He kills them at Ophrah, where they were. And then he goes back to his place at Shechem to be crowned king. What it says, king Abimelech. So what happens then?
And when they told it to Yotam, he went and stood at the top of Mount Gerizim and lifted up his voice and cried and said to them, "Hearken to me, you men of Shechem, that God may hearken to you." The trees went out to anoint a king over them, and they said to the olive tree, "Reign over us." But the olive tree said to them, "Should I leave my fatness with which by me they honor God and man, and go to hold sway over the trees?" And the tree said to the fig tree, "Come you and reign over us." But the fig tree said to them, "Should I forsake my sweetness and my good fruit and go to hold sway over the trees?" Then said the trees to the vine, "Come you and reign over us." And the vine said to them, "Should I leave my wine, which cheers God and man, and go to hold sway over the trees?" Then said all the trees to the bramble, "Come you and reign over us." And the brambles said to the trees, "If in truth you anoint me king over you, then come and put your trust in my shadow. And if not, fire will issue from the bramble and devour the cedars of Lebanon."
And wait a second, that's the end of the parable. Now, before we read what he's saying, I think you all kind of figured out what he's saying. So Yotam goes on to Mount Gerizim, which is the big mountain outside of of Shechem. There's two mountains at Shechem. There's the mountain of Gerizim and the Mount Ebal, which is where they came in through with Joshua. Remember, the tribes broke up into two halves and stood there on top of the mountains doing the blessings and curses there when they first came into Israel, right by Shechem. So here he's going to the top of Mount Gerizim, one of those mountains, and he's screaming out to the people of Shechem, look what you've done. Right? And so this is a parable. This is the earliest parable that we have in the Bible. So it's the book of Judges. It's significant because the Christian Bible is filled with parables. Jesus spoke in parables all the time. Because
Doesn't
by
it
the
sound like
rabbinic-
a poem?
What?
Doesn't it sound like a poem?
No, it's a story, a fable, more like a fable.
Oh.
And it's a parable will be, very importantly, comparing something or someone to something else. So in a parable, you have to have, it's a little story, but it has a comparison in it, an analogy, right? So something is compared to something, right? So in this case, these different bushes, these different flora are compared to kings. Oftentimes in the parables, especially in the Christian Bible, by the time the Christian Bible, let me just say this, the parables, by the time of the Christian Bible, the rabbis were writing parables all the time. So where did the parables come from? Where did this style come from? Well, the easy thing to say is it came from the Greeks, who loved fables, and Aesop's fables are the most popular of those fables, but they go back even before Aesop. Obviously, there were traditions of kind of telling stories with a message for a long time. Maybe some of the early myths were actually supposed to be parables. This is a very old parable. This one that Yotam spews out at the people. But first of all, it shows us the parables go back pretty far in Hebrew literature. So that by the time the Hebrew Bible was canonized, again, this story is already 2,500 plus years old. So the parables go back further than the 2,000 years that Jesus's parables and the rabbinic parables are there. But again, Jesus spoke in a lot of parables, used parables frequently. And it does seem like Jesus did speak in parables. I mean, it's difficult to say. And again, I have to be careful in saying what we know and what we don't know, but the parables do seem to be fairly accurate accounts of, if not Jesus speaking, parables that were told at that time. So I do want to say that those are very consistent with the Midrashic parables, that we didn't read so much of them in our Midrash class because the parables oftentimes are kind of retold in a way that in the Midrash, it's not, at least the way we read it, it kind of de-emphasizes the parable form, because that's not what Ginsburg was trying to do. But even so, they're very frequent in rabbinic writing, including the Talmud. The Talmud has parables in it too. And the most famous parables that we have, in our Western civilization are probably from the Christian Bible. But they do go back to the Hebrew Bible, as you can see here. And usually in the Hebrew parables, there's a king, and usually the king represents God, and a prince or the king's son is us. And in those stories, the king will be teaching his son a lesson. This is a weird one because there's actually a parable about a king and the plant kingdom trying to figure out who's going to be the ruler, which you have versions of this where the lion is the king for the animals, and similar things like a king of the beasts story. But what's interesting about the Hebrew ones, the ones we have also in the Talmud rabbinic literature, is that those style of midrashim, we call mashal in Hebrew, the mashal structure is very much taken up by Jesus. And so some of the parables we have exact versions of in the Talmud. Some of the ones we may not have a version of it, but we think it probably did exist in an original Hebrew source. but they're very powerful ways of teaching, there's a
It
sophistication.
seems to me that parables would come from the oral tradition.
Yeah, I agree, and that's why
They
the
just seem
Aesop's,
that way.
yeah, that's why the Aesop's fables and those we know that there's earlier versions of those that were oral for centuries. You're right, and they seem to feel like that's the way people would tell stories and
Right.
teach a lesson with their story. I think that I love parable. I love the parable style. I just love it. To me, it's like, I mean, it's a silly equation because it's like when you watch a movie or a TV show that teaches you a lesson and you're able to understand the lesson through the characters that you saw, and rather than be preached to, or somebody telling you what you should, you see it play out, and then you realize, oh yeah, that's true. That's one of those powerful lessons that we should think about. So the really, really great parables, and to me, my favorite parable is the prodigal son, which you find it, we find that in the Christian Bible. In Luke, we don't have the exact Jewish origin, but we have very similar ones. But to me, that one is a great one because it speaks to the nature of forgiveness and jealousy, and there's so much going on in that story that to me, that's like to me, that's my favorite parable that exists. But the parables are I think just a great way of making people think without beating them over the head, and they walk away with a lesson, with a memory too, right? Because they can access that story, they can tell that story to somebody else. So this story is obviously one of of who rules, right? And what is so great about this story is that it's almost like you could tell that story anytime, especially today. It's like, who's gonna be your rulers, right? Who are the people that are going to run for Congress or run for a leadership, right? It's not the people who have a good life already. They're not going to give that up, right? They're not going to jeopardize their wealth or their comfort in order to rule. So what do you get? You get somebody who's a bramble, right? You get somebody who's worthless, right? That's what you end up getting. And that's the power of this story. Is it still relevant? Of course, part of what the bramble says, right, is if you don't, I'm going to burn you up. Why? Because the bramble doesn't care. I mean, I don't want to get political right now, but that is literally the world that we live in right now in America. I mean, this line, if not, fire will issue from the bramble and devour the cedars of Lebanon, right? The cedars of Lebanon are the best trees. Those are the highest quality trees. Those are the ones that are the strongest trees, the trees that last forever. The bramble can destroy those. And the bramble literally says, I can burn those down, and I will burn those down if you don't make me king. I mean, tell me that we are not living in this moment right now. I mean, I don't think we've ever lived in this moment more than this right now. That threat, if you don't anoint me king, I will burn you down. How is that not the moment we're in right now? Right?
Terrifyingly true.
What?
It's terrifyingly true.
It is literally like it's speaking to us right now, because the vine doesn't want to do it. The fig tree doesn't want to do it. Just leave me alone, right? I don't need this aggravation. Count me out. And they're just lining up right now to retire out of Congress right now. The people are just coming out of the Senate. And these are some really good people. And it's been going on for 5 years. And it's primarily happening from one party, folks. And these people are like, I don't need this anymore. I don't need this. And I will tell you something. There's a dude in Pennsylvania who's stepping out of the Senate right now, who's overall a pretty good person. He's stepping out because he doesn't want to deal with this anymore in Pennsylvania. But I'm telling you, the people that are not stepping aside right now, The people who are not stepping aside, who are saying, I'm going to fight right now, the only people I'm telling you right now in this country are the women. So if you are not paying attention to what's going on with Cheney and with Murkowski in Alaska, there's the only people that are saying, we are not stepping aside. We're not going to get, you can't threaten us with being burned out. There's the only people right now that are saying that. Everybody else is stepping aside. Kinzinger is stepping aside. Everybody's stepping aside. The two people that aren't, that I know of, are two women. Just remember that. Those are the two people that are telling the Bramble right now, go ahead, try it. So that's for real. That's really happening right now. All right. So he's gonna, Yotam is not gonna wait for them to think about it. He's telling them what they're doing. So here's what happens. This is what Yotam continues after he's told them the parable.
Now, therefore, if you have done truly and sincerely in making Abimelech king, and if you have dealt well with Jerubbaal and his house and have done to him according to the deserving of his hands, for my father fought for you and adventured his life and delivered you out of the hand of Midian. And you have risen up against my father's house this day and have slain his sons, 70 men upon one stone, and have made Abimelech, the son of his maidservant, king over the men of Shechem, because he is your brother. If you then have dealt truly and sincerely with Jerubbaal and with his house this day, then rejoice in Abimelech, and let him also rejoice in you. But if not, fire will come out from Abimelech and devour the men of Shechem and the house of Milo, and fire will come out from the men of Shechem and from the house of Milo and devour Abimelech.
Yep. So Yotam says, if you think this is the way, you're supposed to act, right? And of course, facetiously says to them, just remember what my father did for all of you and what just happened. You just murdered his family. You allowed this. You paid for this. If you think this is right, and go ahead, have a party. But I'll tell you what's going to happen. What really happened is you murdered my family. And because you chose Abimelech, you're going to be destroyed, the people of Shechem. And the house of Milo is this, this power center in Shechem, right? The house of Milo refers to this city, the city's power, if you will, which is at the time, Shechem was one of the major population centers in the land of Israel and within the tribes. So Shechem is one of those cities. Again, it was a Canaanite city that is inhabited at least by some Israelites, but also by non-Israelites, by Canaanites. But it's a major center. It's a major city. It's one of those cities that survived the conquest. This is a major city that he's going to speak against. I mean, this is the equivalent of, Chicago. Maybe it's not New York, but it's definitely in the top. And he's telling these people, this is the bed that you've now made. So he's very much, this is a threat. This is a threat that Yotam is laying out. And again, Yotam is the youngest son, it says, of Gideon. This is what's happened to the family. Now, again, doesn't mean he's a kid, by the way. Doesn't mean he's a 15-year-old kid. Could be, again, that the rest of the brothers are 50 and he's 40, 35. Doesn't mean he's a child. He's just the youngest of that family. There's 70 kids, so assumedly, it's a lot of kids. So where does he go?
And Yotam ran away and fled and went to Be'er and dwelt there for fear of Abimelech, his brother.
Now it makes sense, right? He got out of town, he got away, went further away from his brother to get away from him.
When Abimelech had reigned 3 years over Israel, then God sent an evil spirit between Abimelech and the men of Shechem. And the men of Shechem dealt treacherously with Abimelech, that the violence done to the 70 sons of Jerubbaal might come, and their blood be laid upon Abimelech their brother, who slew them, and upon the men of Shechem, who had aided him in the killing of his brothers.
Yep. Now, there's a couple things here. Not surprising that Abimelech had a falling out with the people of Shechem. It's just a bad arrangement. These are bad people. They're bad. They're all bad. And when everybody's bad, they tend to be bad to each other too. It's not like the badness stops, right? It's not like, oh, well, we're here now. We all got power and like we're all going to get along now. They're bad people. And when it says that there's an evil spirit, a ruach ra'ah, this is similar to what we have later on with King Saul, being kind of, bad things happening around him. When bad things are happening, when you're doing bad things, it doesn't stop. It's not like you can just say, oh, well, we're done. We've killed the 70 guys. So now we're going to go back to being good people. I mean, these are bad people. And it says that they dealt treacherously with Abimelech. So this is what happens when you have a bad king and a bad a power base. It's the bad stuff isn't going to come to an end, right? It's ridiculous. It's going to continue. And it's going to be, again, directed at each other. What it does say here is that he reigned 3 years over Israel. So how much power did Abimelech have? It doesn't say he reigned 3 years over Shechem. It says he reigned 3 years over Israel. So how much power did this guy have? I mean, we don't call Abimelech the king of Israel. We say that Saul is the first king of Israel, David is the second king, and Solomon's the third king. And Solomon is the first king who inherits the kingship from the previous person, his father. But this one does seem a little bit like a dynasty, a little bit. And that Gideon was a ruler, not a king, but he was a ruler, a judge. There's 70 sons that he had that would have, it seems like in some ways, have some type of rule. They get killed by Abimelech, and then he rules. Again, it doesn't say how much power he actually had. It doesn't say that, he did anything with the power. It doesn't say he went to war against anybody else, any of the other countries around him. It doesn't say he created a national army or any of the other things, built cities like some of our other kings will end up doing. But it does say he was a king over Israel. And again, not a long time, it's just 3 years. But things start to go downhill with the people. So what happens?
And the men of Shechem set liers in wait for him on the tops of the mountains, and they robbed all that passed them on the highway. And it was told Abimelech. And Gaal, the son of Eved, came with his brethren and passed through Shechem, and the men of Shechem put their confidence in him. And they went out into the fields and gathered their vineyards and trod the grapes and made merry and went into the house of their God and ate and drank and cursed Abimelech. And Gaal, the son of Ed, said, who is Abimelech and who is Shechem that we should serve him? Is he not the son of Jerubbaal and Zebul his officer? Serve rather the men of Hamor, the father of Shechem, for why should we serve him? And would that this people were under my hand, then would I remove Abimelech. And he said to Abimelech, increase your army and come out.
So there seems to be this rival for power, this guy named Gaal. And we don't know anything about Gaal other than he basically says, who is this Abimelech? Why are we serving him? Now there's a few things there. Also, it says that the men of Shechem put their confidence in him. They were robbing and taking away money and essentially depriving Shechem, or essentially the power of Shechem, Abimelech, from his taxes and from creating an unsafe situation for the people around Shechem. So Shechem is essentially like the men of Shechem, the leaders of Shechem, are essentially undermining Abimelech within, his power. They're taking away his power, right? They're basically doing what they can to depose him. So his own power base is gone. His own people have turned on him. His own relatives, it seems, have turned on him. But he does have an army. And he says, this guy Gal calls him out. And here's what happens.
And when Zebul, the ruler of the city, heard the words of Gaal, the son of Ebed, his anger burned. And he sent messengers to Abimelech privately, saying, behold, Gaal, the son of Ebed, and his brethren have come to Shechem, and they are fortifying the city against you.
So now what's weird is, where is Abimelech when this is happening? Because it seems like he's put Zebul into a place of kind of ruling for him, right? He's now the ruler. Zebul is ruling the city. So where's Abimelech when this is happening, right? Where is Abimelech during this time, right? So it doesn't seem like he's in Shechem. It doesn't seem like he's actually at least there when this is happening. So it's very interesting that Abimelech is
Was he off dealing with the bandits?
except the bandits seem to be working around Shechem, right? So it doesn't seem like this is, so simple that it's going on in his own backyard, but he doesn't seem to be necessarily in that backyard. So he could have been ruling from other places. He could have been up in, he could have been part of the time in, further north and, places like Bethel or some of the other capitals that were going on at the time. Could have been in Shiloh. He could have been in Jerusalem for part of the time, the different major cities around Israel. If he's really ruling Israel, he would have probably been in some different places, not just in Shechem. But clearly his power base was Shechem, and his own power base has been taken away from him. So this is what's happening in his own town, in his own place where he started from. So here's what happens. Here's what he says. So what happens here is that Abimelech, when Zebul, the person he's put in charge to rule Shechem, tells him this, it says his anger burned. That's Abimelech. Abimelech and
Here we are now, therefore, I think. Now, therefore, rise up by night, you and the people that are with you, and lie in wait in the field. And it shall be that in the morning, as soon as the sun is up, you shall rise early and set upon the city. And behold, when he and the people that are with him come out against you, then may you do to them as you shall find occasion. And Abimelech rose up and all the peoples that were with him by night, and they laid wait against Shechem in 4 companies. And Gaal, the son of Ebed, went out and stood in the entrance of the city gate. And Abimelech rose up and the people that were with him from the ambush. And when Gaal saw the people, he said to Zebul, behold, there come people down from the tops of the mountains. And Zebul said to him, you see the shadow of the mountains as if they were men. And Gaal spoke again and said, see, there come people down from the knoll of the land, and another company come along by the oak of Meonanim. And Zebul said to him, where is now your mouth with which you did say, who is Abimelech that we should serve him? Is this not the people that you have despised? Go out, I pray now, and fight with them.
So wait a second. So you can see what happens here. That Gaal is literally said, is literally saying to them, we're going to fight right now. So what happens here is that they literally are going to take, they're going to, at first Gal is kind of duped into thinking that there's not an army out there, right? Then when he sees them, and again, these are the Shechemites. These are the people of Shechem that are kind of being caught in the middle here. They're now being surrounded. They've been surrounded by Abimelech's troops, and they really don't know what to do now because they're kind of caught in the middle. They've got this guy Gaal now that's leading them, and he's been duped into responding too late. Let's put it that way. So Zavul is really working for Abimelech, but he's goading him now into it. Into fighting, into meeting the troops. So here's what happens.
And Gaal went out before the men of Shechem and fought with Abimelech. And Abimelech chased him, and he fled before him, and many were overthrown and wounded right up to the entrance of the gate. And Abimelech dwelt at Arumah, and Zavul thrust out Gaal and his brothers, that they should not dwell in Shechem. And it came to pass on the morrow that the people went out into the field, and they told Abimelech. And he took the people and divided them into 3 companies, and laid wait in the field and looked. And behold, the people were coming out of the city, and he rose up against them and smote them. And Abimelech and the company that was with him rushed forward and stood in the entrance of the city gate, and 2 other companies ran upon all the people that were in the fields and slew them.
Okay. So that at this point right now, Abimelech has gone to war against his home base of Shechem and seems to be pretty much wiping out everybody, right? This is his vengeance. This is Abimelech's vengeance on his own people, which is ironic because they helped him kill his half-brothers and get power in the first place. Then they went over to this guy Gaal's side, and now Abimelech has come back to deal with these people. And he's killing his own people. He's killing his own, now he killed his father's family, right? He killed his father's family in the first place and got his mother's family to help him do that. Now he's killing his mother's family. He's killing them. Now he seems to be pretty effective at killing people. He seems to be pretty good, at least at the job of being a general and being a commander and killing people. He's good at it. If I asked you how you thought this story would turn out, my guess is some of you who have not read this story may not get the correct answer on what's about to happen. Maybe you do. Maybe you get it. Maybe you figured out what's going to happen, but I don't know. Let's see.
And when all the men of, and Abimelech fought against the city all that day, and he took the city and slew the people that were in it, and pulled down the city and sowed it with salt. And when all the men of the tower of Shechem heard that, they entered the stronghold of Beth el Berit, and it was told Abimelech that all the men of the tower of Shechem were gathered together.
Now, it still looks right now at this point, there's been a massacre of his hometown. He's killed everyone in his hometown. That's what I'm saying. I mean, this is a completely Game of Thrones type situation. I mean, this is massive amounts of bloodshed. Fratricide is just the beginning. Now it's just outright wholesale slaughter of people, plowing a city with salt so nothing could ever grow there again. This is just a massive disaster, human disaster. And the people have all gone into the tower, the keep, if you will, of the city. And it's the inner side, inner part of the city where the king would have his last holdout, right? The keep, if you will, the tower. Again, at this stage, it's just been murder all day, just killing everybody. it appears that these guys that are going into the tower, that's going to be where they get killed, or where they be murdered. By the way, the story also is reminiscent for those who are familiar with English history of the last Jews of York who were murdered in the rampage, the pogrom against the Jews of York in northern England, who were finally went into the Tower of York to try to be saved and ended up being murdered there too. So this is where it seems like it's going, this final death scene, if you will. So Abimelech is told all the people are in Shechem. Let's see how this ends.
And Abimelech went up to Mount Zalmon, he and all the people that were with him. And Abimelech took an axe in his hand and cut down a bough from the trees and took it and laid it on his shoulder and said to the people that were with him, what you have seen me do, make haste and do as I have done. And all the people likewise cut down every man a bough and followed Abimelech and put them to the stronghold and set the hold on fire upon them, so that all the men of the tower of Shechem died also, about 1,000 men and women.
Wow. Wow. They set fire to the place with this wood that they cut down and set fire to. It seems like almost like, wow, that's exactly what the parable said was going to happen.
Mhm.
You know, the bramble is going to set fire to everything. So again, Shechem gets their just rewards. These were people that helped arm Abimelech to kill his family. Now they've been killed. Wow. Justice has been served, of course, except for one thing. Abimelech is still alive.
Then Abimelech went to Tevetz and encamped against Tevetz and took it. But there was a strong tower within the city, and all the men and women and all they of the city fled there and shut themselves in and went up to the top of the tower. And Abimelech came to the tower and fought against it and approached right up to the door of the tower to burn it with fire. And a woman cast an upper millstone upon Abimelech's head and crushed his skull.
Not exactly the way you thought that this story was going to end, was it? So Abimelech in his campaign goes next door to the town of Thebes or Thebes. He goes back to this town, and in his campaign against this city, he ends up getting a millstone thrown off of a building, one of the tower, and crushes his skull. Huh. Not exactly what you thought would happen. The woman killed him. Well, let's not quite dead yet.
Then he called hastily to the lad, his armor bearer, and said to him, draw your sword and slay me, so that men should not say of me, a woman slew him. And his lad pierced him, and he died. And when the men of Israel saw that Abimelech was dead, they departed, every man to his place.
Now, that's the way Abimelech dies. He essentially has a assisted suicide. It's assisted suicide, right? He asks to be killed and he gets killed. Now, can we draw conclusions from this from what we should do in a case where someone is in terrible terminal pain? Should they be allowed to end their lives? This is a scene we see repeated again during the time of King Saul, where he is mortally wounded and asks his armor bearer to kill him. Seems to be a theme. Samson, to some extent, has somebody aid him, another lad aid him in his suicide, homicide, final action. So it's a that's the next story. Then the Saul story happens. It's difficult to say in the sense of what conclusions we can draw from those, especially Samson and Saul having some very good qualities, but also some very bad qualities. Abimelech seems to be pretty much just all around bad, but it's difficult to take away any conclusions away from this of whether this behavior is condoned or what type of editorial comment the text makes about it. There isn't. It doesn't say anything that, that what he did was horrible. Would it, should it? I don't know. Can we, we can't on the same time say, well, it's accepted because these are not good characters. These are people who go out, they die ignominiously. And in this case, it's terribly that case, which is that he doesn't want people to know that a woman killed him, and we all know that a woman killed him. So his whole goal of going out with out people knowing what really happens, the vanity of this guy here is then presented here at the end too. He's another horrible quality about him, but I mean, compared to the other horrible qualities, it shouldn't surprise us. But we do know that these people who are in power oftentimes are terribly vain, and they are, that they are so concerned with how they're going to appear to others that they, it's almost humorous. I mean, I don't want to say the story is humorous. It's not humorous, but there is a kind of a, not just an irony, but almost a comic irony to the fact that this guy gets killed essentially by a woman who throws, I mean, it's almost like a Monty Python skit where literally the old woman, throws a rock down on his head and kills him. But it is a, it's difficult to take away values from this, but it does teach us a little something about these kinds of people. And again, we talk about, what we take away from this and what we learn and what we see at these characters. And again, one of the things that, came out last week in the news was, this story that Chris Christie talked about where, Trump kept asking him whether he was going to tell people that he got COVID from him, that he kept bothering Christie over whether he was going to tell people that he got sick from being around Trump. That Trump was actually, that bothered him. And again, in the trial that's going on with Netanyahu right now, one of his closest confidants who really likes him said that the guy was more concerned with his appearance than, how he appeared in the media than he did actually about what he was doing to govern and keep the nation safe. So these are things that are, coming out about people who, again, the vanity oftentimes seems like the least important of their bad qualities, but there is this sense that it's part and parcel of behaviors that are also things that we wouldn't want to see in leaders, anybody. So he asks to be killed so that people won't say that he got killed by a woman. But of course, Abimelech meets his end. He seems like he's a very competent general, right? Based on all the things that he's doing, he seems like he knows what he's doing in battle, and he's pretty unbeatable. I mean, he's pretty successful. There's a sense of the story that's almost not even like, it's not even Jewish. I mean, that's one of the reasons I think that Jews never really studied this story. I mean, this sounds like a Greek myth. I mean, this doesn't sound like a Bible story. I mean, I guess there's definitely biblical elements to it, but it's not the normal kind of biblical story. The characters, the heroes, the villains, I mean, there's no real hero in this story, folks. I mean, Yotam is the kind of the courageous guy who stood up against Abimelech, but he's not even the protagonist in the story. Where's Yotam? All I'm saying is
isn't God does not appear in this.
No, it's a real not Jewish story in a lot of ways. And like how did Abimelech? But look, we don't know how much Abimelech actually did. I mean, we don't know about him. We only read about him. Obviously, there's no archaeological evidence for him, but I say obviously because again, I will keep saying it, but we don't have any archaeological evidence for anybody in the Bible until we really get to the later kings of the house of David and Israel, like King Ahab. We have archaeological evidence for King. We can hold something that King Ahab held. That's still about 400 years from this point. We have
Judges seems to me just a compilation of stories.
Yes, and there's probably mythic elements to these stories. But it seems like an Abimelech really did exist. I mean, I just want to point out, just because we don't have archaeological evidence for this guy, I think the stories, there is a kernel of the story that I think is real. It says here, the men of Israel saw that Abimelech was dead, and they departed every man to his place. That implies, and by the way, what I want to put out there is that this story seems to, there's a backstory here which we actually don't have, in the sense that the story that we actually have in the Bible, the Judges version of it, is not, I think the actual story is more interesting than that. This is really how bad Abimelech was, and why he's a failure, and why he's evil, and all those stuff. I mean, I get that. But there's a story here which basically says that there was a guy named Abimelech who the rest of Israel, or other tribes of Israel, were looking to as a leader, a king, whatever you want to call him. But when it says the men of Israel saw that Abimelech was dead and they departed, and that he's not fighting with his people of Shechem anymore, something happened in that period of time, from the time that the Shechemites made him king to this point where he's going into battle and fighting the people of Shechem. Something happened over those couple of years where Abimelech had a lot more power than just being the king of Shechem. That's all I'm saying, is there's just a story there that we don't have. The story isn't there. One moment he's being made king of Shechem, and the next moment he's going to war against Shechem, which again it's not a surprising thing. I mean, I don't want to dwell on it, and I do think though that it's super relevant, the lessons from this. But there's a reason why Donald Trump went to war against New York and New Jersey and took away, the SALT money that they're now trying to get back. California and New York got hammered by the tax cuts that affected us, and I mean us, by people who were homeowners in California. These tax deals were punitive on states that were disproportionately voting against Trump. He punished those states. And again, he's not the only person who's done that, but that happens, where presidents, will take out their vengeance against the people that have betrayed them. And in this case, sometimes it's the very cities that they come from. I don't think Nixon liked California that much when he was president. And that's not like, I'm not editorializing it. That's a fact that people know where their base is. And oftentimes their base is not where they came from. And so there's a power to this story, the resonance to this story, I think is super relevant. I mean, like almost speaking to us right now at this moment of, how does somebody turn on their own people, turn on their own, where they actually came from. I mean, this is so amazing. And I will say that oftentimes the irony of this, and I guess the resonance of this too, is it a woman that's actually going to end, the way that this has gone off a cliff. I'm not so sure that it won't be a woman that finally puts the last notch on this nightmare that we're going through right now. So I think
excavated Shechem.
Yeah, well, there's an interesting issue, Gail, which is that there's some excavations that went on in Shechem in the 1920s and 30s. By the 1960s, Shechem, which is now, as I said, Nablus, was going through a major population explosion, where a lot of Palestinians that were displaced and had been driven out of Israel or left Israel, whatever. Again, there was a little bit of both. The reality is that they came to Shechem, they came to Nablus, and Nablus is a super big population center now for the Palestinians. There is not going to be anytime in the near future excavations at Shechem that will help shed light on the Bible. To the contrary, it is highly likely that if anything was found even accidentally, it's not going to be turned over to anybody that's going to look at it from a Hebrew Israelite. It's going to help us. So if they found some Israelite pottery or Israelite documents, or it's not going to be documents, but Israelite remnants, the Palestinians are not turning that over. Unfortunately, it's not likely. I'm not saying it's impossible. It's not likely. It's very, very highly unlikely that anything that comes out of Shechem is going to help establish biblical. Even if it doesn't establish, even if it just says something about the Bible, it's not going to be turned over. The politics of this now, unfortunately, have gotten to the point that anything that is connected to the Bible, that kind of establishes Jewish presence in these places, it doesn't bode well for the Palestinians to have that come out. This is just the truth of it. I mean, I'm not going to. I mean, there's nothing you can say about it other than they will not. That will
Instead of
not.
they don't dig, then they destroy something that they find.
I know. Listen, I hope one day we have a situation in the Middle East where, people can dig together, that they can look at stuff in history and not inflame the current situation. I mean, that's the hope, but we're not there now. And so I wasn't going to bring it up, but yeah, it's not likely going to happen now. Like, I hope it does. I mean, I'm not holding out a lot of hope that it's going to happen in my lifetime, but maybe, and it would be great if there were excavations that went on all around Israel. But I guess right now that's a luxury that we don't have right now. And unfortunately, history and luxury, the luxury of, archaeology, that's still a white man's game, if you know what I mean. These are things that, people get to do when they send their kids off to college and they get to go on a dig, for a summer. It's awesome, but it's you're talking about poverty and politics that have made that not at this stage, not a reality. So I hope, I mean, I won't give up my hope that that'll happen, but right now we're not there yet. So Abimelech is dead, assisted death. And this is the end of his reign. This is the way it ends. Now, as Reverend Lynn said, there's no God in this story, except for this line.
Thus God made reparation for the wickedness of Abimelech, which he did to his father in slaying his 70 brothers. And all the evil of the men of Shechem did God requite upon their heads, and upon them came the curse of Yotam, the son of Jerubbaal.
Yep. And so Yotam.
Isn't that just an addition to?
Yes, or the organization of this story is essentially going to, from the beginning, essentially tell us that both Abimelech and the people of Shechem are going to get their comeuppance. Yotam doesn't do anything other than curse them. Yotam doesn't do anything. He doesn't lead anybody in battle. He doesn't figure into the story as the agent of, normally you'd think, oh yeah, Yotam's going to lead an army against Abimelech and avenge his brothers and his father's house. Now, it's not one of those stories, but it is a story where there seems to be a divine, it's not divine, but whatever. There's a measure for measure, right? He gets his punishment. He gets his just reward. Look, what I think is interesting in this story is I do think that this story is I think the story is actually reflecting this guy Avimelech, this history of a king in the time of the judges who, I mean, maybe he's not recognized as the king of Israel, right? He's not, there's no dynasty, there's no consolidation of power. He's only in power for 3 years. There's no national army, there's no national city. There's none of the stuff that happens later. There's like this precursor king. We dabble in a little king thing, which the bigger issue here is that if God, the interesting thing, I guess, to put out is that if Abimelech is able to attain some type of political force without God, and again, it's not successful either, by the way, he's not successful, but if he's able to even create some type of kingship without the blessing of God, that kind of almost calls into question, like, where's God in this whole process? So there is a issue here, which I think is not really addressed in the story. It's not the issue. Look, the authors of this And the editor does not want us to go down that road. But there's enough here. There's enough in between. There's enough reading between the lines that you see that it's not like King Saul was the first time that they did this. This wasn't like this national desire for a king. They didn't actually have a little bit of dabbling in this. So keep that in mind when we get to the story in the next book of the Bible about Saul, that this isn't the first time that they've essentially had a little experience with a king. And it's not a judge. I mean, Abimelech is not a judge. He's a king. And it's just a weird like footnote in history that people don't even like know the footnote. They don't even know that there's this guy that at least some of the other tribes recognize, because when they say the men of Israel, it's not his tribe. It's not even his town. It says the men of Israel. All right. So we have about a half hour. I thought maybe we'll take a look a little bit into the next sections before we get to the next big story, which is the story of Samson. That's a major story. So this was a little story. I mean, this is a couple chapters. It's a little story. It's a story, again, that people don't know.
We never read that as a.
We never read it. We don't talk about it. In Israel today, they talk about it a little bit. They sometimes tell that story of the parable of the brambles and stuff at Tu B'Shvat. Sometimes it's taught in schools in Israel around Tu B'Shvat because it's all about plants. And it shows the kind of like, a little bit of plant history or whatever, plant mythology, if you will. So those are but we don't read them. I mean, we don't. As I said, most Jews don't even know the story. I mean, he's not even talked about in the Midrash or in Talmud. I mean, we don't talk. I mean, people don't know about Abimelech. He's just literally like, he's not just a footnote. He's like an undiscussed person because he's problematic in so many ways. He's not just a bad person. He goes against the way people should be. What?
Aren't there more Abimelechs in the Torah? Is he the only?
So we said there's an Abimelech. The first Abimelech we actually meet in Genesis, right? We meet an Abimelech who's king of the Canaanites. He's a Canaanite king that interacts with Abraham, and we're about to read about him in our Genesis Wednesday night class. We're going to read about Abimelech. There's actually two Abimelechs, one during the time of Abraham and one during Isaac's time, probably different Abimelech.
The name just sounded familiar to me.
Oh no, it means my father the king. There's the Abimelech is.
Isn't there a song too?
No, nope, not that I can.
That's David Melech.
Ah, yes. David the king, yes.
So Abimelech is probably was a name that a lot of princes had because it means my father the king. Now, I would say that it also is people would see it as a name for God, right? That God is my God is my king. My father, not my father's king, but my father God is the king. There's later on an Abimelech who we read of only was really the father of Abiatar, one of the priests of during the time of King David. Another Abimelech is the husband of Naomi, the one who dies, takes the family to Moab, and is the father-in-law of Ruth. So Abimelech is also the character in the very beginning of the book of Ruth, but we know nothing about him. But he seems like a little bit of I guess the one takeaway is that he fled his native country and went to Moab and left Judah behind. He left his kingdom behind. But again, would have probably been a really common name in ancient Israel. Again, oftentimes relating not to literally my father is a king, but God is my king. All right, so let's read a little bit of chapter 10, which kind of takes us into this next story. We'll read next week.
And after Abimelech, there arose to defend Israel Tola, the son of Puah, the son of Dodo, a man of Issachar, and he dwelt in Shamir in Mount Ephraim. And he judged Israel 23 years and died and was buried in Shamir.
Yeah, so we don't know anything about this guy Tola. We don't know who he is. We know his father. We know he's from the tribe of Issachar. Is he a good guy? Is he a bad guy? He is, according to this, kind of getting back to, we're getting back to Judges, in that he reigns as a judge. He serves as a judge for 23 years, and that's it.
And after him rose Yair the Giladi and judged Israel 22 years. And he had 30 sons that rode on 30 ass colts, and they had 30 cities, which are called Chavot Yair to this day, which are in the land of Gilead.
Yeah,
And Yair died and was buried in Kaman.
Yeah, and we read about this next guy, Yair, who we also know nothing about, other than he's from, as you can see, from Gilad, right? So he's from the tribe of Manasseh. He's from that group. And interestingly, he also has a lot of sons. These sons seem to get along okay. They're not going to get murdered. but what it tells us is that his name is incorporated into the words Chavot Yair, which is this town of Yair, which is in the area of Gilad, and that's how it got its name. So he is from that tribe of Manasseh, from Machir, and that's really all we know about him. It seems weird, of course, that they had 30 sons and they all rode around on 30 donkeys or 30 asses. It's not kind of I guess it's memorable because it seems so weird, but Chavot just means encampments, but it's that's how the place got its name, from that guy, from Yair. He seems to
Sounds like a children's nursery rhyme.
I know, exactly, like one of those Chaucer tales, or one of those, or like you said, a nursery rhyme, Mother Goose. Yeah. 30 guys on 30 hours. Yeah, doesn't, but again, seems like a real guy. We know where he's buried. He's buried in Kamon. By the way, all these judges, we hear where they're buried. We know where they're buried. Where they are. They're buried over there. This guy's buried in Kamon. This other guy's buried in here. But we know where they are. Know where they're buried. Okay.
And the children of Israel continued to do evil in the sight of the Lord, and served the Baalim and the Ashtaroth and the gods of Aram and the gods of Zidon and the gods of Moab and the gods of the children of Ammon and the gods of the Pelishtim, and forsook the Lord and served him not. The Pelishtim are the Philistines? Yeah. And the anger of the Lord burned against Israel, and he sold them into the hands of the Philistines and into the hands of the children of Ammon.
So after these couple of judges rule, the people go back to bad behavior, and they worship the Baals and the Ashtaroth. But it also says they worship the gods of Aram, which is Syria, the gods of Sidon, which is Phoenicia, gods of Moab and Ammon, which are in the modern day Jordan. They had their own gods, Chemosh and Milcom, and the gods of the Plishtim, the Philistines. They're making a little appearance here now. The Philistines had their own god. They had their god. They had gods, but Dagon is their big god. Dagon is their god of the fertility, the god of the harvest. Assumedly, they also had gods of the ocean or the seas, because they were Aegeans. They were guys that came over from the Greek areas. but they have these, they have lots of gods. There's not just Baals and Asherah, they're everything. They're worship God. The Hebrews are worshiping every kind of God you can imagine. And in particular, though, God punishes us by putting us in the control of the Philistines and in the tribes, into the hands of Ammon, the Ammonites. So Bnei Ammon are the Ammonites. They're on the, like I said, in the Jordan. So on both sides, the Philistines are on the west side, the Ammonites are on the east side. Both of them are not necessarily working together, but both of them have kind of taken control over Israel. So on the other side, with the Ammonites, they're probably taking over the parts of northern Israel, those parts that go into, Gilad, the Golan and the Galilee, the places of Ephraim and Manasseh are coming under their control. And in the south and in the west, it's more the tribes of Judah and some of the coastal tribes people probably are coming under the control of the Philistines, the Plishtim. So it's not good. And it's coming from all sides. It's coming from all sides. And they're worshiping all these different gods. And sure enough, they're being sold into essentially servitude to these peoples.
And that year they afflicted and oppressed the children of Israel. And thus for 18 years, all the children of Israel that were on the other side of the Jordan in the land of the Amorites, which is in Gilad. Moreover, the children of Ammon passed over the Jordan to fight also against Judah and against Benjamin and against the house of Ephraim, so that Israel was sorely distressed. And the children of Israel cried to the Lord, saying, we have sinned against you because we have forsaken our God and have served the Baalim.
Right. And so they're being
Contrite now.
they're being assaulted, and they cry out. Finally, they say, we have sinned against you, God. We have served the Baalim. We know what we've done wrong.
And the Lord said to the children of Israel, did not I deliver you from Egypt and from the Amorites, from the children of Ammon and from the Philistines and the Sidon also, and Amalek and Maon did oppress you, and you cried to me, and I delivered you out of their hand. Yet you have forsaken me and served other gods. Therefore, I will deliver you no more.
Wow. So God says, I've redeemed you. I've taken you away from taking you out of control of these people, all the way back from Egypt. And every time you go back, you serve these other gods. I'm done. No more. I am done. God says, it's over. I'm not going to do it anymore. But like all good parents, God says these kinds of things and then ends up going back. Can't say no to us. Can't say no to his kids.
Go and cry to the gods which you have chosen. Let them deliver you in your time of your trouble. And the children of Israel said to the Lord, we have sinned. Do to us whatever seems good to you. Only deliver us, we pray you, this day. And they put away the foreign gods from among them and served the Lord, and his soul was grieved for the misery of Israel.
And I do not know why they have a lowercase h. That is clearly God. God is sad. He doesn't like to see us suffering. Like, again, any good parent, he knows the kids deserve it. He knows they're getting what they deserve. He is still, God is in. It's impossible for God not to feel for us. Just can't. I know they're getting what they deserve. This is their bed. This is what they made this, but I can't not be sad about it, right? I can't. It's this relationship, right, of, fixing their problems every time they have it.
Then the children of Ammon mustered together and encamped in Gilad, and the children of Israel assembled themselves together and encamped in Mizpeh. And the people and princes of Gilad said to one another, what man is he that will begin to fight against the children of Ammon? He shall be head over all the inhabitants of Gilad.
Friends, that build up this big battle, you have to come back next week and read the story of Jephthah. Story, this mini story right before the story of,
Hey, Rabbi,
yes.
where are we in the timeline of when we came out of the desert?
So if you add up all the time, it's about 200 years since
Okay.
we came out of Egypt. Now, you know, how does this relate to archaeology? How does this relate to where we're going, which we know we're backing ourselves up to King David, King Solomon? If we assume that time was about 1000, which is pretty safe to say based on the archaeology. Wait, I know you're going to find, you're always going to find people that say, well, we don't have the archaeological evidence to confirm King David. I know. I'm of the impression that there was really a King David. I'm under the impression and the feeling and the belief that we will find even more information about King David in the city of Jerusalem as we excavate it. Almost everything that we found so far, well, pretty much everything that we found so far has correlated with a time of about 1000 BC, about 3000 years ago that King David would have lived. So if we use that as a hard place to say that this is around the time of King David, for sure. And again, we haven't found anything from King David's hand. We haven't found a seal from King David. We've only found stuff from his descendants. We definitely have found stuff from his descendants. If we can say that that's about 1000, then the problem is the time of the judges has to come to an end around that time. But how long did that time last for? Did it last for 200 years? Did it last for 300 years? Did it maybe even last for 400 years? Was the time of the judges really the time, if you will, that went on before the Israelites had a king, which means that if not every, I'm just going to say it, and again, people, I've said it before, so it's not the first time I've said it. If not all the Israelites went down to Egypt during the time of Moses and during the time of Joseph to Moses, if there were some Israelites that were still back in the land of Israel, which there seems like that's the case, then the time of the judges really is the time that existed before there was a king and when there were still tribal confederations that lived in the land of Israel. However they saw themselves, whether they saw themselves as coming out of Egypt, which would have been about 200 years before, or whether they saw themselves as descendants of Abraham, who would have lived 500 years before, that time of the judges is really kind of almost an open-ended, but it can go back 200 years, 300 years, 400 years around, that the judges kind of are ruling as tribal confederations. So assume for a fact, let's say that the story of Deborah actually relates to a time when tribes were in the land of Israel a good few hundred years before King David, and it's very likely that's reflective of a time when there were judges that were in power and were kind of the leaders, whether that was all of the descendants of Moses as the people that came out during the time of Moses back to Israel, or were there Israelites that just never left that are being ruled by people like Deborah? I believe the latter, that it's more that these were people who never left, who were being ruled by people like Deborah, in which case it doesn't have to be 200 years from the time of Moses and Aaron to the time of King David, because that would have been about 200 years based on kind of like what most people say, that the time of Moses was about 1200 BC and that David's tent is 1000. If you look at the time of the judges, the way it seems to be laid out, it seems to be a lot longer than 200 years. That's all I'm going to say. So if you feel that way as you've been reading it, which I'm assuming you're saying, then yes, it's probably safe to say that the time of judges is longer than a 200-year period. It's really kind of the way that the Israelites always lived until they had a king, which I think that's more likely the way that things happened, was that the Israelites were a tribal confederation. They lived there. They had stories that were from a common ancestor, or they kind of created that myth or whatever, but they lived in the land of Israel under not having kings. And then they made this shift to align themselves into a monarchy, into a kingdom. So ironically, it probably was pretty close to how long there were colonies before there were states. But no, it's not a great analogy, but it's a similar situation that there were hundreds of years before there were, before there were well, not hundreds, but 150 years from the 1600s to the 1770s. There was about 150, 200 years before we became, a nation, but probably history ran a little slower back then too, right? History runs really fast now. It ran faster 200 years ago than it did 2,000, 3,000 years ago, but it probably took a long time for people to start feeling like they were a nation. So next week, we'll read the story of Jephthah.
When do we read the story of Judge Judy?
Judge Judy. I'd read that story. She's a compelling character. I like Judge
She's
Judy.
cool. I like her too.
She is a pistol. She must be a joy to have at Thanksgiving and Hanukkah. I'd love to have her around the table. Anyways, I hope everyone has a great Thanksgiving. We do not have class tomorrow night, Wednesday night. A lot of people are traveling. We've got family coming and going. For those who are at services Friday night, you saw my family from England. My wife's family is here visiting. My daughter Dina is in town. The daughter Rachel left, but lots of comings and goings. So I'm hoping that people get to have some time with family and friends over Thanksgiving. I hope everyone is safe and has a chance to be thankful. So, and I'm thankful today for all of you and for having some time to study a story that most people never get to study. But man, I forgot how relevant it was until I started looking at it again, to look at, looking and talking about it. I'm amazed by it. All right, everybody, take care.
Take care,
Have
everyone.
you
Happy
ever studied
Thanksgiving.
Kohelet or,
Yeah, and we'll be back to Kohelet in several months, but we'll be back to Ecclesiastes for sure.
and how about Job?
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
we'll be looking at Job. We'll be looking at Job. The
Okay.
wisdom literature is on the agenda. All right,
Okay.
everybody. Thanks again. Take care. Bye-bye. Thank you.